going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Trick 10s. Today I am going over EVA Foam, or as I like to refer to it as EVA Foam. Now I'm sure that all of you guys have probably heard of this or seen it before in a boat somewhere, whether it was in person or in a picture online. But let me tell you, this stuff is really cool. I've installed a lot of carpet into boats when I first got into boating, and I hated it. I mean, the feel of the carpet after it's installed, it's nice, but it's just so involved as far as the upkeep and the installation if you want to install new carpet into your boat. So when I first saw the EVA Foam, I was hyped about it. I was like, man, this stuff looks cool. I want to install some of this. So I went ahead and purchased a couple of sheets for a build that I was doing, and I've never looked back. This stuff is really nice. It's definitely high grade quality, marine grade quality. This stuff is meant to last. It's heavy duty. It's durable. Now I deal with 3 different brands of turf. The 3 brands that I use are Sea-dek, HydroTurf, and OrthoDek. In no particular order, I like all 3 of those sheets. Now they come in different sizes depending on the manufacturer and also depending on the finish that you get. Now I've got some samples here. I've got all the samples that those 3 companies offer. There's a lot of colors that you can choose from. One of the cool things about the EVA Foam is that it can be CNC cut. And by that, I mean that the turf gets stacked in different colors, and then they cut it with a CNC router table. It goes to different depths to reveal different colors and different patterns. Personally, I haven't installed any of the cut CNC turf, but I have installed some of the CNC cut HydroTurf that was not stacked. I put that in the yin tent. The number one thing I like about HydroTurf is the sheet size and the fact that they also have a pretty wide selection of colors. This is HydroTurf stuff right here. It's got different cut grooves. I'll get into that in just a second, but you can see they've got a wide variety of colors. All of these are HydroTurf. All of these are HydroTurf. There's tons of different colors, and these are HydroTurfs too. These are more like your personal watercraft colors. These are for like jet skis, paddle boards, things of that nature. There are a lot of different colors though, and majority of those sheets will run in the 47 to 80 inch range. Now you will have to cut around the edges, probably about 1 inch on each side to get a square corner, because the way it rips off the mill, it just doesn't come out straight. I'm going to show you that in just a second, because I'm getting ready to install some turf in this boat right here. But these are all the OrthoDek colors right here. A little bit less of a selection, but they have different colorways that are not in the HydroTurf. Especially stuff like this right here. This is what's in my King Neptune build. This is the blue, black, and teal, and these colors are pretty cool. And they also have stuff like these red, white, and blue swirls. You're not gonna see the swirls with the HydroTurf. So OrthoDek definitely comes in handy when you wanna go with something outside of the box. So I've used a lot of OrthoDek. The Sea-dek colors are a little more simple and conservative. I don't have them on a ring like this, so I'm gonna put them in the corner of the screen. I got a little samples of them in the little blocks. They do offer a good product. It's just their colorways are kind of bland in my opinion. And for me personally, I like to have something a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more flashy outside of the box. So I don't use a lot of the Sea-dek. Today, I'm going to be installing some 1/2 inch cut groove Gator Camo HydroTurf. This one right here. I've got 4 sheets of this that are going to be going into this boat right here. This is the Tracker Grizzly 1648 kit build that I just finished up. Everything is done except for the turf and a little bit of decals. They're going to go on the outside of this thing. Now before I get started installing this turf, the main thing you have to do is the prep work. You have got to clean the surface very well. All of the turf that I use, I get the 3M backer with. I highly recommend you do the same, because that sticky back is going to save you a ton of time. The reason I don't like doing carpet is because you have to use some type of a spray glue or trowel-on glue, and it's just messy. You don't want to go through the trouble of installing this turf in here and then having to use spray glue on it when it has a sticky back on it. It's literally a sticker. You peel the back off and stick it down. And you better put it down in the right spot the first time, because if you push this thing down, it is going to be extremely hard to remove. Not impossible, and you're gonna lose some of the stickiness to it. So when you install this stuff, you gotta make sure that you get it in the right place. This cut groove turf that we're going to be installing in here is going to be a little bit more different and a little bit more difficult than some of the flat, smooth sheets. Having the 1/2 inch cut grooves in there, I keep all my lines going from bow to stern. With that being said, obviously one sheet is not going to cover this whole boat. So we're going to have some seams in here. I'm going to show you guys how I do that. I'm going to show you guys how to start this turf, because you might get your turf in, you might have built your whole boat and you're like, okay, so where do I start? I'm going to show you right now. All right, so we're getting ready to put our first piece in here. We got to mark this thing where we're going to put it. This is the most important piece of the whole puzzle because this does have a cut groove to it, and your lines have got to be straight going from the bow all the way back to the stern. If they get off a little bit or start wiggling, then you're going to have an ugly install job. It's just going to be botched up. There's really no way to fix it once your lines get off. So it's very important that you keep these lines straight. This turf is a little flexible. It's hot out here, guys. It's 90 something degrees out here right now, and this turf will flex. It will stretch. So it's important that you don't manipulate it too much. You can manipulate it, and if you do, you're going to end up with a squiggly line in your cut groove, and you're not going to be happy with it. Man, this turf smells good. It smells like brand new shoes. I really love the smell of this stuff. But this looks sick. I like this colorway. I put this in a couple of boats. I just put the same turf in the Punisher build not long ago. It's one of my favorite colors. The Gator camo with the OD green and the black. It's two of my favorite colors to begin with, so obviously it's right up my alley. You don't really need a lot of tools to install this. You need to take your time. That's the main thing. But what you will need as far as tools to install this is going to be your most important thing, a razor knife, and lots of extra blades. You're going to have to change this blade out at least every 2 or 3 cuts, in my opinion. I mean, the blade doesn't get dull. It gets the glue stuck on it from the sticky back. If you're not using the sticky back, it might last you a little longer, but I don't do that. I'd rather just replace these blades. These blades are cheap. These sheets are probably about 160 bucks. So I'll go through 10 blades to do this boat, no problem. Now, the thing about these blades, you can make them last a little bit longer if you just wipe them down with a little bit of WD-40 and get the goo off of them. But they're razor blades, guys. They're cheap. If you're spending the money to put this turf in your boat, don't skip on a couple of razor blades. So don't be shy with the razor blades. The next thing you're going to need is a tape measure. Obviously, you got to have a tape measure. You can't do anything without a tape measure. You're going to need a Sharpie. I recommend that you use a Sharpie that is a color that's in your turf. Because if you got a blue Sharpie and you got white turf and you put a mark on it and it ends up showing up a little bit after you cut it, you're not going to be happy with it. So if you're going with something like this, use a black Sharpie. If you've got a brown color, get a brown Sharpie. They make Sharpies in every single color in the world. Then you're going to need a square. Now, I do have a big framing square somewhere around here, but this will work for what I'm going to be doing on this first part. And then I got to find that framing square. My stuff gets lost in the garage. I just built this entire boat. I'm at the stage now where I want to turf this thing, get it out of here, and get the shop cleaned up. But this will work. I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this in just a second. And then you're going to need some acetone. This is important because you're going to have to vacuum this entire boat out really good, and you're going to have to wipe it down with acetone. And this is going to ensure that the sticky back on here actually sticks to the boat and makes good contact so that it will not pull up. So it's very important that you wipe it down with acetone. The last thing that you're going to need are some straight edges. Now, I got 2 pieces up here. I just use a piece of 1 by 3/8 aluminum flat bar. This is perfect for those shortcuts. Then I have a piece of 1.5 by 1.5 by 1/8 aluminum angle. This piece is about 6 foot long. I'm going to use this to drag cut for the long seams that are going to be going from the front to the back. I'm going to adjust this camera a little bit, and I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to start laying out this first sheet. Let's get back to work. All right, so I went ahead and cleaned this entire deck. Now, these Tracker Grizzlies do have like a grit texture to them, which really sucks because I was scared that the turf wasn't going to stick to it very well. I did stick a leftover piece that I had onto a small section in the front, and I just wasn't happy with the way it was going to stick to it. So I sanded the entire boat. All of the grit, I sanded it down so it was nice and smooth, and then I came back, vacuumed it, blew it off a couple times, wiped it down with some acetone. Now I'm getting ready to lay off my line. This is very, very important. This part right here is going to make the difference in how your turf job turns out, especially if you're using a cut groove. Doesn't matter if it's a 2-inch or a 1/2 inch, anything, even if you're just using regular sheets, this is important. You gotta keep your seams straight from the bow to the stern. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I measured my sheet at 47.5, so I'm gonna measure from my longest point in here over 46 inches. Once I cut that sheet off at a straight edge, it's going to leave me with about 47 inches, and I'm going to have enough to overhang and overlap up in that corner and then come back and trim cut. 46 inches puts us right on the edge of this hatch, which is good. We can start here and the seam will end up right on the edge of that hatch, and then that will give us a little gap so we can start our next piece on top of these hatches. It'll work out really well that way. Now, we take our framing square off the front. That lines up really well. That's another good thing about doing your hatches symmetrical. That way the straight lines in between the doors will line up, make it easier for your turf install. So since these are already running square and they're straight, I don't really need to put the framing square on here. What I'm going to do is get my big straight edge, and I'm going to run that along this groove right here and then draw my line to finish this thing off to the front. All right, so grab my big straight edge, get this thing flush against these two hatches. Then I'm just going to draw my line right on up. That line is going to be my start spot. So I'm going to start on the floor and I'm going to run it up. I'm going to draw a line on the face of this vertical wall too, and then I will just keep that piece straight along that line. Then I'll push it over into the side, and then I'll tuck it in nice and neat over there and trim cut it. I'm going to put you guys back in the hyperlapse. It's really hot out here. I need to turn my fans on. It's going to take me a minute to cut this piece. I'll show you guys how I cut it and how I installed it in just a minute. Let's get back to work. All right, so we're getting ready to cut our first piece. We got to have a straight line to start out with. So as you can see here, this one has like, half of one of these half-inch sections here. We'll follow this down to the other end, and we're already into a whole section right here. So what I'm going to do, I'll take my straight edge, I'm going to line it up right against where this little groove starts, and I'm going to cut this all the way down. That way I have a nice straight edge. Then I'm going to come back with my framing square. I'm going to put this along the edge like that. I'm going to mark this and cut it across here. That way we have a square 90-degree corner right there, and that is going to start out right there in that corner right there, run all the way up, and we'll tuck it over. Put you guys back on the hyperlapse. Let's get back to work. All right, first sheet is installed. I got some trim work to do along that side, but it's pretty good. I'm probably gonna trim that side up a little bit too. But you see how it worked out? Our line ran right up here and all the way up. And the way I cut this, see how it stops right there? So then the next piece is gonna pick up at a low piece. And the way it worked out right next to this door, that's money. That's really gonna help me out because it's gonna hide that seam in both of these hatches. And the only part of the seam you're gonna see is gonna be up there because all this is gonna be one piece to finish this off. So now what I got to do is come back and trim this out. See how all these hinges stick up a little bit right here? Well, you can feel them. So what I do is feel them over to the corners where they start to drop down. Feel right on the center of the hinge. Cut like a little 1-inch slit in there. Then you can see where the hinge is at. Then I just slide the razor knife up against that hinge, keep it tight, and then I'll slide all the way down. And same thing on the other side, and then pull that piece out of there. And then when I come back to cut around these hatches, it's the same deal. I start where my hinge stops. Feel the groove. I'll drop it right into this groove right here, the razor knife, and just slide it around all four sides of my hatch. I'll cut an X where the hole is at for the handle so I can reach my finger in there, open it up. Then I'll come back and trim cut around these edges. Sometimes I put a piece underneath of this of aluminum just as a backer. That really helps when you cut it because what happens if you don't have a backer on there, it's going to want to fold over and it's going to be a lot harder for you to cut it. You're probably going to end up with a cut piece where it's wavy instead of straight. So I'm going to put you guys back on the hyperlapse. I'm going to go ahead and trim out around all these doors over here, and then I'm going to get this next piece going right here. Let's get back to work. All right, so we got the front deck finished up. This is only 2 pieces in here. Now I did come back and trim out around all of these hatches and cut out all the holes for the handles. So that takes a lot of time, and that is actually the harder part. It's more tedious, but making sure that everything lines up is pretty difficult too. But this looks really good. You can see our seam is actually right here. You can kind of see that seam, maybe a little bit. It blended really well. I can still come back and tuck this a little bit tighter. This turf will still be pliable for about 48 hours after I get done. So I'm going to come back and tuck down all these corners and stuff like that. I'm going to have the boat for at least another 4 or 5 days before the customer gets it. Now up front here, I have one more piece I'm going to put up here. I was looking at the way this ended up, and you see the foot pedal tray is going to drop in here, and it's got like a 1-inch flange on it. So it's going to end right here, and that seam's going to be exposed. So something I'm going to do that I'm not going to explain later, but I'm going to show you right now is I'm going to come flush across here with this. I'm going to cut this off. You see these sheets didn't quite end up being the same right here. And that's just because they run various lengths, and I had to cut different amounts off of the bottom to get a square cut. But if I cut this square flush across with this front of this foot pedal tray, then my seam will be back here. And then this piece that's going in here will run underneath that foot pedal tray as opposed to butting up to where it's basically going to stop. So that's important. You don't want to have a seam right here when you could just move it back 1 inch and then it would be underneath the recessed foot pedal tray. I'm leaving this recessed foot pedal tray as something that can be removed because he's going to upgrade his grass and stuff. And he may need to remove that to get in there to pull wires. So that's very important. If it runs up like this, it's a good idea to put your seam somewhere in this foot pedal tray because then you have the ability to hide it and you can put this foot pedal tray in and it will help hold this turf down. If I put it here, it might end up peeling up or something. So I'm going to do that, but now comes the tricky part. Normally when I do the turf, if I'm using like a smooth finish without the cut groove, I would go ahead and get onto the back deck. Then I would do my back deck. That way, when I do my floor, it will allow me a little bit of clearance because you see down here, it's pretty flush. It's got a little bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch gap over there somewhere. But if you do the floor last, if you're using smooth turf, it helps out a lot because you can allow for the difference in height variances if your floor varies a little bit. But I can't do that with this turf. Now that I've got this started with this cut groove, 1/2 inch pattern, I've got to keep that moving the entire length of the boat all the way back into the back deck. So I've got to start with this floor piece next. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure this floor really good. I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece that's going to drop in here. And obviously I'm going to have to start it where this one left off. And I got to have all these lines matched up. This is what makes it difficult with the cut groove turf. So these lines have to come all the way down across this floor and continue on throughout the back of the deck. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put you guys back on the hyperlapse. I'm going to try to get this floor piece installed and we'll go from there. Let's get back to work. All right, so we got the floor installed. This is where it gets real. Obviously, I need one more little strip to go over there. This floor is hard to install and line up. I tried to stick about 1 inch of this all the way across because you literally have to line this up and squeeze it back or forward so that these cut groove lines will match up. It turned out pretty good. And back here, it's pretty good too. It's pretty tight. We got a little gap, maybe a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, but this stuff is about 1/4 inch thick, so this sheet will cover that gap. Now, this is where you really got to think about what you're doing. I mean, even before I cut this piece, I started thinking about it because I had 2 sheets up here. Now, the drop off of the small piece that I cut over here, I cut that piece 20.5 inches, so I have this piece right here. This piece I was thinking about using to put on these side panels. So I'm going to have a small piece for the floor, but these side panels are about 17 inches from here up and back. So I can use that, and it's 43 inches long. And this piece right here is about 87 inches. So it should work out to get both pieces out of that. This piece is about 25 inches. So I should be able to cut about 5 inches off of that and get away with putting this piece in the floor right here. Then I have this piece left right here. Now this is the piece that I just cut off of this sheet in the floor. I have 1 piece of turf left and it's sitting in the house. It's hot out here. So I'm trying to keep the glue cool because I'm having issues with the glue sticking to the hinges when I'm pulling them off. You can see I got a little bit of glue over here. I'm gonna have to come back and scrape all that off. Not a huge deal, but it's a pain in the butt. If I leave it inside and keep it room temperature, when I install it, that doesn't happen. So now I've got this thing figured out where I'm gonna put a piece here and a piece on the floor. They're all gonna come out of that sheet right there, that long sheet. this piece right here and the pieces inside I'm going to put on this back deck. Now the first piece I'm going to put is obviously going to be from the floor up and back. This piece is a little bit more tricky than putting these pieces in the front, because you can't just cut it long and hope that it lines up down here. So you can see down here it's starting with like a whole 1/2 inch cut groove. So it's a little tricky to get this thing figured out, but I'm going to cut my piece with a seam on this side that's going to start out either a flat or with a low spot, and then over here I have to lay this out and measure it. So I'm basically going to measure from here to here where it comes down flush with the floor. That way I can start installing it in this corner right here, because we got to keep that same cut groove going, and in order to do that you got to start right here in this floor. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start right here, bring this piece up, I'm going to slap this in, roll it back as tight as I can get it. I'm probably going to leave it about a 1/2 inch or 1 inch longer than the measurement from the floor up and back to here. And then the piece that I have left off of that and the piece that I have left off of this piece right here, I'm going to use this to wrap the second piece right here to finish this off. And whatever other pieces I have, I'm going to put inside of these hatches, try to finish this thing up. Put you guys back on the hyperlapse. Let's get back to work. Alright, so we got her all done. Turf is installed. It looks so good. It's a bit of a pain in the butt to install the 1/2 inch cut groove turf, but once it's installed, it looks so good. It also gives you like a texture to it. It really sets the thing off. I mean, the hardest part is just keeping these straight lines all the way down. But you can see they turned out pretty good. All the way up the back. All these lines are parallel. They run from the bow to the stern. There's no real issues. I didn't have any real problems with it. I did good with this install. I even turfed inside of these hatches. I had just enough to do the floors inside of here. And I put these drain tubes into all the hatches too. You can see there's a hole back there. It just drains out to the bottom of the hull. All of the hatches have those in them. I put all the handles in here. The only thing I got left to do on this rig is to put some stickers on it.
decals and put this thing out on the water. All in all though, if you guys are looking for an alternative to carpet, this is what you want to go with. This stuff is comfortable, it's soft. I mean, it's super nice if you're up here barefooted. It doesn't get super hot either. The only thing about this is you got to cover your boat when you get off the water. You cannot leave it sitting out like this for the sun to beat down on it, because the sun is a monster and it will destroy anything. But you got to cover it. That's it. You wash it down and cover it. A lot of guys use Dawn soap to clean this stuff, and that's fine for one of these aluminum John boats, but if you know anything about wax, you got a fiberglass boat, you do not want to use Dawn soap on your fiberglass if it has wax on it, because it's going to take it right off the boat. But other than that, it's very little upkeep and maintenance. It's easy to clean. Just wipe it down with a wet rag. Most of the stuff that you get in here can easily be wiped off. I mean, I clean all my boats meticulously every time I use them, but that's just me. If you guys want your stuff to last, you got to take care of it. That's how it works. Everything turned out really well though. These edges around the front and tucked up in the side over there, the best thing to do with those is leave yourself about an inch extra to run up the sides, and then come back with a straight edge and just drag cut along your straight edge, move your straight edge back, drag cut along that, and you can get a nice finished edge in there. I still might have to do a little bit of trim work in here, but for the most part, I think this whole turf job turned out pretty sick. I'm gonna do a couple more videos on the reveal of this boat and talk about the kits that I put in here, because I made all this stuff, all the aluminum in here. This is custom. These are kits you can get. You can make your boat look just like this one by buying these kits and installing them. I highly recommend that you check out this EVA foam if you're looking for a flooring to put in your boat, because this stuff is dope. And there's so many different colors and different patterns and stuff like that you can use. It's not that hard to install. I would rather install this stuff into 5 boats before I had to carpet one boat. Just, that's so much easier. If you guys want to get any of this type of turf to put in your boat, my buddy Nick Kingston sells this stuff. He will hook you up. It's about $160 some a sheet, but he will give you a best price around on it. Go check him out at Fabrics Direct for You. It's pretty simple. I'm going to leave a link for that in the description of this video. I'm super happy with the way this turned out. The green lights really set it off. This Gator camo turf is one of my favorites. It looks so good in the boat. All in all though, I really love this colorway, and I think it just looks perfect in this boat. Really sets it off. All right guys, so I hope you learned a little bit about how to turf your boat. You guys can do this. It's not that hard. Just take your time and make sure that you use fresh razor blades. You got this. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment. If you got any questions or need help with a build or anything like that, reach me at professionalwelding@gmail.com. Go help me out guys. Buy some of my merch. I got a bunch of merch that just hit my site, tricktens.net. I love you guys. I'll see y'all next time. I gotta get back to work.